You've got body fat right now. Everyone does. Even the person you think of as skinny. And here's the strange part. That fat isn't a design flaw. It isn't a modern problem. It's the single greatest survival technology your ancestors ever built. And they built it into your body without you doing a thing. For most of human history, food didn't arrive. It disappeared. It came in unpredictable bursts and then vanished for days, sometimes weeks. There were no grocery stores, no fridges, no I'll just grab something later. There was feast, and there was nothing, and the gap between them could kill you. And yet, you exist, which means somewhere back down the line, thousands of your ancestors stared starvation directly in the face, and won. The question is how? How does a soft, slow, clawless animal, an animal that can't hibernate, can't go months without eating, can't store food in its cheeks like a hamster, survive a world that regularly tried to starve it to death? The answer is stranger than you'd think. Because it turns out the human body is doing something quietly brilliant. And so was the human mind, and when you understand both, you'll never look at hunger, or a full plate, the same way again. Let's start with the thing you're carrying around right now. Here's a fact that sounds like an insult but is actually a superpower. Compared to every one of our closest relatives, humans are fat. Genuinely, measurably fat. A healthy chimpanzee carries somewhere around 9% body fat. A healthy human? Somewhere between roughly 14 and 30%. We are, by primate standards, absolutely swimming in the stuff. Scientists at Duke University actually have a nickname for our species based on this. They call us the Fat Primate. And they mean it as a description, not a joke. Now, your instinct is probably to feel bad about that. Don't. That fat is the reason your bloodline didn't end in some cold cave 40,000 years ago. Think about what body fat actually is. It's not just padding. It's a battery. It's stored energy your body packed away during the good times so it could keep the lights on during the bad times. Every gram of it is a message from a well-fed day, mailed forward into a hungry one. And humans evolved to be exceptionally good at storing it. Our fat cells are biased, locked, almost, toward the type built for holding energy rather than burning it off. Where a chimp's body might shrug off surplus calories, a human body grabs them and buries them like treasure. For most of history, that was genius. A body that hoarded energy was a body that could skip meals and keep walking. Keep hunting. Keep thinking. Because here's the thing almost nobody mentions. Your brain is a fuel monster. It's about 2% of your body weight, and it eats roughly 20% of your energy. All day, every day, whether you're solving equations or staring at a wall. That giant, expensive, glorious human brain does not get to take a day off when the food runs out. So the fat wasn't vanity. The fat was the fuel tank, keeping the most demanding organ in the animal kingdom running when the world went dark and empty. But storing energy is only half the trick. Because a battery is useless if you don't know how to draw it down. And the way your body drains that battery when the food stops, that's where things get genuinely eerie. Imagine you stop eating right now. Not forever. Just nothing comes. For the first several hours, your body doesn't panic. It's running on the sugar floating around from your last meal, plus a quick access stash of it tucked in your liver and muscles. Easy, comfortable. This is the version of hunger you already know. The grumbly, I skipped lunch version. But that quick stash doesn't last long. Maybe a day, give or take. And then your body has to make a decision that would terrify any engineer. It has to switch fuels while the engine is still running. So it does something remarkable. It starts breaking down that stored fat and converting it into a backup fuel, molecules that can cross into the brain and keep it firing. Your body essentially reformats itself to run on its own reserves. It flips from burning food to burning you. On purpose. In a controlled, orderly way. This is the part that should stop you cold. Your body has a built-in starvation mode, not a bug, a feature, a whole second metabolic operating system sitting dormant, waiting for the day the food doesn't come, and it has been waiting your entire life. And it protects the important stuff. As the fast deepens, your body actively works to spare your muscle for as long as it can, because an ancestor who burned through their own legs on day 3 couldn't chase down the meal that might save them on day 4. Evolution did the math. Your metabolism runs a triage system, and it is ruthless about what gets sacrificed and what gets defended. Your ancestors didn't know any of this was happening. They just knew that a strong, healthy adult could go a surprisingly long time on not much at all, and still get up and walk 20 kilometers to the next valley where the herds might be. The honest answer is we don't know the exact limits, and it varies enormously person to person. But the machinery is undeniable. You are carrying an emergency generator you've probably never once had to use. Which raises a genuinely uncomfortable question. If your body is this good at surviving hunger, why did anyone starve at all? Because the body was never the weak link. The world was. A human body can ride out a hungry week. What it can't do is outrun a bad season, a failed hunt, a river that flooded the roots you were counting on, a winter that arrived early and stayed late. Biology buys you time. It doesn't buy you food. So our ancestors did something the fat and the metabolism couldn't do alone. They got clever. And the cleverness took 3 forms, each one a kind of insurance policy against the void. The first was preservation, beating the clock. When you kill an animal, you have a problem, a mountain of meat, and a body that can only eat so much before the rest rots. So humans learned to cheat decay. They dried meat in the sun and the wind until it turned to leather that lasted for weeks. In cold places, they froze it in the ice. They smoked it over fire. They learned that salt and smoke and cold were, in effect, a way to pause time on food, to take a single lucky day and stretch its calories across a starving month. Think about what that actually is. That's a fridge. They invented the fridge with sunlight and smoke and patience, tens of thousands of years before electricity. The second policy was knowledge, knowing where the next meal hid. A hunter-gatherer wasn't wandering around hoping to trip over dinner. They carried an encyclopedia in their heads. Which plants were food and which would kill you? Which roots stayed edible underground through winter, like a pantry buried in the dirt? When the fish ran, when the birds passed overhead, when a particular tree dropped its nuts. This wasn't instinct. It was hard-won information, memorized and passed from elder to child across generations, because the person who forgot which berry was poison didn't get to become an ancestor. And that leads to the third policy, the most powerful of the 3. Because it turns out the single best thing standing between our species and starvation wasn't in the body at all. It was other people. Here's something researchers have found again and again when they study hunter-gatherer groups. They share. Relentlessly, almost compulsively. When a hunter brings down a large animal, that meat doesn't belong to the hunter. It gets divided, distributed, handed out across the whole group, often with the successful hunter ending up with barely more than anyone else. In some groups, there's even a custom of mocking the big kill, teasing the hunter, making sure nobody gets too proud. The message is blunt. You are not a hero. You are a link in a chain. To a modern brain raised on you, earned it, you keep it, this looks insane. Why would you give away food you risked your life to get? Because sharing is a savings account you can't lose in a fire. Follow the logic and it's beautiful. You can't store fresh meat in your body. You can only eat so much before it spoils and the rest is wasted. But you can store it in other people. You feed the group today, and when your hunt fails next week, and it will, the group feeds you. Generosity wasn't kindness. Or, it wasn't only kindness. It was the most sophisticated insurance system on Earth, running on trust instead of money. A lone genius with a full belly still dies when his luck runs out. A well-connected, generous member of a tight group survives failure after failure after failure, because the group absorbs the shocks that would kill any individual. That's the real answer to how humans beat starvation. Not fangs, not speed, not even the fat. We beat it by refusing to face it alone. So by now you've got a clean, satisfying picture. Feast leads to famine, so humans stored fat, preserved food, memorized the land, and shared everything. Scarcity was the enemy, and human cleverness was the shield. Now I want you to take that entire picture and turn it completely upside down. Because there's a discovery buried in the research that flips the whole story on its head. And once you see it, you can't unsee it. We tend to assume the deep past was a nightmare of constant, gnawing hunger. Cavemen, starving, desperate, one bad day from death. That's the image, right? Except when researchers actually compared how often different kinds of societies faced famine, they found something that makes no sense. Until it does. Hunter-gatherers, especially in warmer climates, seem to have suffered fewer famines than the farming societies that came after them. Read that again. The primitive foragers we picture as perpetually starving were, in many cases, more food secure than the advanced farmers who supposedly solved hunger by inventing agriculture. How is that even possible? Because of a trap nobody saw coming. A hunter-gatherer eats from a huge, diverse menu, dozens or hundreds of different plants and animals across a wide territory. If the berries fail, there are roots. If the roots fail, there's game. If the game moves, they move with it. Their safety came from variety and mobility. Lose one food, lean on another. The whole system was spread out, flexible, impossible to wipe out with a single blow. Then farming arrived. And farming was miraculous. It produced more calories from less land than anything before it. More food meant more babies, meant bigger populations. Progress, obviously, but look at what those farmers actually did. They bet everything on a tiny handful of crops. They stopped moving. They tied their entire survival to a few plants growing in one fixed spot, and they let their population swell right up to the edge of what those crops could feed. So when the rains didn't come, when the one crop failed, when the blight hit, when the fixed field turned to dust, there was no backup. No wide menu. No moving on. Just a huge, hungry, rooted population staring at empty ground. Here's the punchline, and it's a brutal one. Agriculture didn't end hunger. It industrialized it. The foragers we pity had spread their risk across the whole living world. The farmers we admire concentrated theirs into a single failure point, and then multiplied the number of mouths depending on it. So the deepest survival strategy of all wasn't a technology. It wasn't fat, or fire, or salt, or even sharing. It was diversity. It was the refusal to depend on any one thing. And the moment our ancestors traded that diversity for the raw power of the harvest, they became richer, more numerous, more advanced, and, in the worst years, far more likely to starve in enormous numbers. We didn't defeat starvation, we made a trade with it. And we're still living inside the terms of that deal. Which brings us, strangely, all the way back to your body. The one reading this. The one carrying that ancient battery of fat. Because you are living in the weirdest chapter of this entire story. For the first time in the history of your species, for a huge share of humanity, the food doesn't stop. The famine doesn't come. The battery never has to discharge. And your body has absolutely no idea. It's still running the old program, still hoarding energy against a winter that no longer arrives, still whispering, "Eat it now, store it, you don't know when you'll eat again," to a person standing 3 steps from a fully stocked kitchen. Every instinct that once kept your ancestors alive now quietly works against you, in a world they could never have imagined, and you can't seem to escape. That's the strange inheritance. The things that saved them are the things straining us. The genius became the burden, not because anything broke, but because the world changed faster than a body could. So the next time hunger shows up, the real kind, the kind with a little edge of anxiety underneath it, maybe don't just curse it. Maybe recognize it for what it actually is. It's the oldest voice you carry. A voice that kept a fragile, clawless, slow-moving animal alive through ice ages and dry seasons and failed hunts and empty winters, generation after generation, all the way down to you. Every person who ever felt that hunger and found a way through it is standing behind you right now. Thousands of them. Not one of them broke the chain. That's what you inherited. Not just the fat, not just the fear of empty. You inherited the win. You are the proof that it worked, and you're carrying it forward, whether you ever think about it or not.